Hey, this is a Bible Forum. It is Sunday night. It's a little bit around 8 o'clock at night, and that means we're here for you for the next 2 hours, sometimes a little bit longer. We're going to be looking at life through a biblical lens and trying to solve all the world's problems in 2 hours or less. We want you to be a part of the program. We have our chat room up and running. Got some folks starting to gather. I'm trying to figure out how to get my monitor going so I can keep track of what you're up to, what's really happening in internet world. It is April 15th. That used to be tax day. But now apparently we're going to do tax day on the 17th, which is a couple of days from now, Tuesday. So I hope you have your stuff ready and able to go. This is a production, a ministry of alternatives, biblical counseling and education. That's a nonprofit corporation. Providing people with practical understanding from God's Word. We do a lot of different kinds of things. On this program, we're looking at life from a biblical perspective. We're drawing from the news of the week, demonstrating the biblical implications, trying to show you the direction our culture is going and how things are working, and offer some practical insight to life and how to live it. We stream the Bible Forum live every Sunday night from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern from our website, thebibleforum.net. You can access the chat room from there and YouTube channel and some blogs and other things. We archive the show on all of these various platforms, most of which you can access right from the website. We also have a counseling website, trybiblicalcounseling.net. We have a practical look at godliness in the Christian experience from a website called livinggodly.net. And then we look at life, the way kind of the world is looking at it, from the view that Lot had there overlooking Sodom and Gomorrah as God was destroying those cities of the plain. He was on a mountain called Zoar. And so we have a website entitled theviewfromzoar.com, giving us that perspective. And then there's our Bible Institute, Bible Institute of Charleston.org. You can go over there and check that out. To get it out of the way, you'll see that I have a couple of books sitting up here. These are books that I have written. They are available from the website. One of them is entitled Breaking Out, and it talks about what it is to be saved and how to live the Christian life. And the other one is a practical look at the world as it tries to tear itself apart. It's called Frontal Assault. We think the devil sneaks up on us. He doesn't. He comes right in the front door, and we just watch it happen, generation after generation after generation. Nothing new under the sun. Love for you to get a hold of those. You can go to the website and click around, and you'll find a way to do that. One of the things that has popped up this week is some new technology. Some new artificial intelligence technology. The New York Police Department is beginning to fool around with this. They're not the first. The devices in question are called Stingrays. And the Stingray is designed to track cell phone calls. It's the newest artificial intelligence technology. Being applied to video surveillance systems and promising to thwart criminal activity, not by detecting crimes in progress, but by identifying a crime before it happens. The goal here is to prevent violence, such as sexual assaults, before they actually occur. An Israeli company by the name of Cortica, with deep roots in security and AI research, recently formed a partnership with Inja and with Best Group to analyze the terabytes of data streaming from CCTV cameras in public places. One of the goals is to improve the safety in those public places, city streets, bus stops, train stations, that sort of thing. It's already very common practice for law enforcement in cities like London and New York to employ facial recognition. We've looked at that in the past, and even to match up license plates with the camera surveillance and so forth. But Cortica, with their artificial intelligence system, promises to take this a lot farther. They're going to be looking at behavioral anomalies, things that would signal that someone is about to commit a violent crime. Oh, yeah. Legal statutes are about to be rewritten. They're going to come to your house because you are about to commit a crime. Don't you just love it? Did you see or hear the Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg testifying before Congress this week? It is my opinion that our government is on the verge of regulating this sort of technology. But while all of this is going on, NPR and at least one other news outlet interviewed Facebook's chief operating officer, a woman by the name of Sheryl Sandberg. And the issue is allowing third-party access to millions of users' data. That's you, and that's me. Sandberg defended Facebook's negligence by saying, quote, "We were way too idealistic. We didn't think enough about the abuses." Of course, I'm not sure anybody believes that. Facebook has been busy imposing their own editorial and moral standards on users and advertisers, censoring conservative and controversial posts and account owners with some form of regularity. At the same time, they have apparently been allowing third-party users almost unlimited access to our information. And apparently none of that raised any flags until now. And it raised the flag because a conservative organization was able to get a hold of this information. As long as money was changing hands, apparently, it wasn't a problem. There are several YouTube videos in which former high-level Facebook employees are seen and heard expressing their fears about where all this is going. These interviews are relatively old, a year, 2 years back. Not news. These are former insiders who now stay away from Facebook and other social media, while our 8, 10, 15-year-olds go merrily along believing all is well. Can you say, I don't know, parents? I don't understand it. We heard this week that Calvin Broadus Jr. has come out indicating that he now is a Christian. You know Calvin? Well, you probably know him by his stage name. His stage name is Snoop Dogg with 2 G's. In his past, he has not been exactly the image of morality and all that's upright and clean. But now he's telling the world that he's a Christian. Now, that's not new. I mean, it is from him, but we're hearing this from these sorts of people all the time. The question is, should we believe him? Well, we'll take him at his word. But in 2009, he announced that he had joined the Nation of Islam. In 2012, he became a Rastafarian. And in 2018, he's born again. What advice does he have for his skeptics, people who don't really believe him? He says, and I quote, "The devil is a liar. I thought church was supposed to welcome sinners. If you find someone trying to find their way back home, the natural thing would be to accept him with open arms. He went on to say, we're not going to throw stones while you trying to get right and walking back into the church house, end of quote. That's what's running people away from the church right now as we speak, he said. We're trying to get people back into church with a different perspective of come as you are. Show love. We show love. We give love. Then looking straight at the camera, he asks the question, what about you? Have you checked your status? Are you going to heaven? Why are you judging me? How much have you done for the Lord? I would say that clearly this man has no idea what the Bible teaches about being a Christian. We'll give him all the benefit of the doubt, but we'll watch. Pretty is as pretty does, they say, and Christian is as Christian does. And that's not being judgmental. That's Bible. By their fruits ye shall know them. Christianity is what's on the inside, in the heart. And if it's in the heart, we'll see it. Stay tuned. California Senator Richard Pan has stepped up to the plate and introduced a bill that would clamp down on criticism of any official story. How's that? The bill is entitled SB 1424, Internet: Social Media, False Information Strategic Plan. It targets social media based in California. Reading through the bill, you see it is fairly broad-based. It applies to any internet blog, website, or just communication, texting, and the like. The bill would require any person who operates a social media, defined as an internet web, with a physical presence in California to develop a strategic plan to verify news stories shared on that website. That ought to keep the mainstream media busy for a while. But you know, it wasn't that long ago when that was the definition for news. And if these folks going to school for this sort of thing or working at outlets and being trained, we're all being trained to get at least 3 sources. Make sure your source is telling the truth. Make sure it's right. Don't just print something because somebody put it in your ear. We haven't actually seen that in the last 5 or 10 years. We'll see how that bill does in California. I think unless you're living in a van down by the river, you've heard, read, or seen news concerning the gas attacks in Syria. The attacks targeted northern rebel-held areas. According to published reports, dozens of people, including children, died. Some writhing, choking, gasping, or foaming at the mouth after breathing in poison that possibly contained a nerve agent or other banned chemicals. And that according to witnesses, doctors, and rescue workers. They said the toxic substance spread after warplanes dropped bombs in the early morning hours. Some rescue workers grew ill and collapsed from proximity to the dead, just being near them. The Syrian military accused insurgents of responsibility, saying they accused the army of using toxic weapons every time the insurgents, failed to achieve the goal of their sponsors. Talking about us. But only the Syrian military had the ability and the motive to carry out an aerial attack like the one that struck the rebel-held town of Khan Sheikhoun. The world knows that Russia is propping up the Syrian government right now. The world knows this sort of thing would not happen without Russia's tacit agreement, if not active support. Russia has long sought a warm water point. She has found one in Syria and is trying to maintain enough distance from the fighting to appear respectable. Israel appears to have retaliated with rockets and bombs of its own, attacking the airstrips where the attacking planes are located. Russia then threatened Israel to be careful. On Wednesday, the United States deployed the aircraft carrier Truman and its strike group along with 7 warships equipped with cruise missiles to the Med. They told us it would take 6 or 7 days for this group to arrive on station and another 3 or 4 days to get set up, which places it on station about April 22nd, next Sunday, a week from today. But last Thursday, the guided missile destroyer USS Donald Cook, with its 60 Tomahawk cruise missiles anchored off Syrian territorial waters, was being harassed by low-flying Russian warplanes. Our president has expressed his desire to pull troops out of the Middle East. And now this. The world governments are against the use of poison gas. The United Nations Security Council passed a resolution to establish a new body to determine responsibility for these chemical weapon attacks. Of the 15 members in the Security Council, 12 voted in favor. Bolivia opposed it, China abstained, and Russia vetoed it. Well, on Friday night, Saturday morning, France, Great Britain, and the United States coordinated an early morning attack on facilities that make chemical weapons and or do research in how to. The more than 150 rockets were fired from several ships from 3 nations in a matter of 4 minutes. The defensive rockets were seen in the air over Syria about 5 or 10 minutes later. Imagine what it takes to coordinate 3 nations' warships and aircraft so that they all arrive on station and the rockets hit the ground within 4 minutes of each other. That ought to get somebody's attention. We'll see. Over in Great Britain, they're having a problem like they are in most major cities in the West with people on the street shooting people, killing people, robbing, raping, general mayhem. In Great Britain, citizens are not allowed to own guns. It's not like America. It's one of the reasons we have a law that says we can. But over there, they have now outlawed the weapon of choice among terrorists and thieves, and that weapon is knives. In response to all of the crimes involving knives, the mayor of London has called for increased knife control, warned that anyone caught carrying a knife will feel the full force of the law. Did you hear that? Carrying, not using. That would be me. Maybe you. I have carried a knife since I was probably 8 years old. I have never killed anybody. I've never cut anybody. I've never thought about cutting anybody. It's just what we did in those days. Mayor Sadiq Khan has also asserted that there is never a reason to carry a knife. I don't know how you open tightly sealed envelopes or packages. How do you cut the rope or the string or any other strong packaging items, not to mention other things? How do you whittle if you don't have a knife? In his announcement, the mayor, who's Muslim, his name is Khan, highlighted ways his office is working to decrease knife crime. He says targeted patrols with extra stop and search powers for areas worst affected by knife crime is one of them. Extra search powers. A new violent crime task force, 120 officers focusing solely on violent crime, weapon-enabled crime, and serious criminality. And finally, every London borough will be required to come up with its own knife crime action plan. How's that working? Well, we're all going to find out. But the police made more than 900 arrests during Operation Winter Nights in November and December of last year, taking more than 350 weapons off London's streets. Now, I need you to know that my knife has never had a mean or evil thought in its entire life. It simply lies there in my pocket, sometimes for months, with no complaint and no sudden moves. I don't know what it is about British knives that are so different. Therapists in the state of Washington can now lose their medical license if they try to help minors get rid of unwanted gender confusion or homosexual attraction. And that's according to a new law. These people are always passing these kinds of laws. The point here is, if that's the way you feel, then it's normal. May not be normal for me, but it's normal for you. And nobody, not even your parents, have the right to convince you otherwise. Democrat Governor Jay Inslee signed State Bill 5722 into law this past Wednesday. It declares the state has a, quote, compelling interest in protecting the physical and mental health of anyone under 18 from serious harms caused by conversion therapy. What if it's caused by parental authority? I digress. Under the law, conversion therapy is defined as any counseling or treatment by a licensed medical professional intended to, quote, change an individual's sexual orientation or gender identity, or eliminate or reduce sexual or romantic attractions or feelings toward individuals of the same sex. They meant gender, but we know what they mean. We're talking children in your home. They're having these feelings, they're having these desires. Nobody can come in if they have a license and say, no, you can't think like that, you can't act like that, you can't pursue that, you can't fill your mind with those things. That's what parents used to do. Conversion therapy, also known as reparative therapy, challenges the notion that sexual attraction is biologically rooted and thereby unchangeable. Prominent medical organizations such as the World Psychiatric Association have condemned the practice, but many former homosexuals attest to the treatment's effectiveness. Supporters of therapists helping people overcome unwanted attractions point out that therapy is about helping clients achieve their goals, and some seeking therapy want to cease or not act on same-sex attractions. What's the problem? At this point, you might be confused, as I am, thinking psychological therapy is about helping you understand and live at peace with areas of your life you either don't understand or don't like. Only you would be wrong, at least in this case. A therapist, by definition, is apparently there to help you cope with whatever you are or think yourself to be. They're not there to help you climb down off of that roof. Keep in mind, coping, which is the sum total of what these people do, is not the same as fixing. Coping is helping someone find peace with the craziness that is their life. Craziness because you're not equipped to bond sexually with people of your own gender. Do we have drugs for this? We seem to have drugs for everything. Sexual fulfillment is more than just feeling fulfilled. It comes when you interact with someone who is opposite what you are. Something about the definition of words here. Now classified as unprofessional conduct in Washington state, conversion therapy is grounds for suspending or revoking a medical license, regardless of whether a minor seeks it out and the law contains no exception for parental request or approval of the treatment. Isn't there some Bible verse about the time when children become the authority, when they, I don't know. The law does include language stating the ban does not apply to speech from non-licensed private citizens or non-licensed religious practices or counseling performed under the auspices of a religious denomination, church, or organization. So far, parenting doesn't require a license either. But stay tuned. Planned Parenthood in Pennsylvania, at least one branch, has called for the Walt Disney Company to create an animated princess who has had an abortion. This was in March of 2018. Planned Parenthood Keystone, that's the branch of health service provider based in Trexlertown, Pennsylvania, tweeted, quote, "We need a Disney princess who's had an abortion. We need a Disney princess who's pro-choice. We need a Disney princess who's an undocumented immigrant. We need a Disney princess who's actually a union worker. We need a Disney princess who is trans." They later explained they were wanting to, quote, "make a point about the importance of telling stories that challenge stigma and champion the kinds of stories that too often don't get told." That from Planned Parenthood's president and CEO, Melissa Reed. Well, it got the attention of one former Disney princess. And she wrote, "In 1981, I worked at Disney World as a singer-dancer, where my voice was used in recordings as Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty for special events and ongoing shows. I performed on average 5 shows a day in front of Cinderella's castle, singing and dancing to 'Someday My Prince Will Come' and 'When You Wish Upon a Star.' But then at the age of 18, she says, she became pregnant. She decided to get an abortion in order to keep her job as a Disney princess. She writes, "I quickly lived to regret that decision." She was so distraught in the aftermath of her abortion that she ended up quitting her job in order to deal with her grief. Eventually, she said, "I found healing. It was an arduous struggle to navigate my personal grief, but by the grace of God, I am living an amazing life." She is now married. She has 2 biological children and 5 adopted children. She is an advocate for orphans and for adoption, and she wants people to know that abortion is not the answer. She says, quote, "Disney doesn't need a princess who has had an abortion. Abortion doesn't empower." The story of Cinderella in defying her stepmother and sisters has been empowering women for thousands of years. Cinderella, the orphan girl, was enslaved by the women in the house, and her story cannot be improved upon. Planned Parenthood responded with, quote, "Upon reflection, we decided that the seriousness of the point we were trying to make was not appropriate for the subject matter or context, and we removed the tweet." Sadly, interestingly, there are at least some folks in the world today who are making a connection between Roman Catholicism and socialist China. And all of this is being stimulated by the Pope's trip over there and some of the comments that he has made, policies that he has made since returning. One author writes, "Hell may not exist, according to Pope Francis." We talked about that a week or 2 ago, and I explained to you that he did seem to say that, but he has rectified that in a new book. But the pontiff believes to be creating one for his own flock in China, according to one of the most revered Roman Catholic cardinals in the Eastern world. Cardinal Joseph Zen, Emeritus Bishop of Hong Kong, blasted Pope Francis' deal to accommodate and appease China in its desire to control the church by having its functionaries choose its leadership. The Catholic Church in China is divided into the illegal underground church, which remains faithful and in communion with Rome, and the Chinese Patriotic Catholic Association, whose bishops are appointed by the government. Members of the underground church are often persecuted by the Chinese government. In an interview with the U.S.-based Catholic TV network EWTN, Zen told host Raymond Arroyo, quote, "They are going to annihilate the underground church," end of quote. On the other hand, one of the Pope's supporters, Bishop Sanchez, in defending the pact with China, said, quote, "Today's totalitarian Chinese regime best exemplifies the social doctrine of the Catholic Church among governments in the world." Did you hear that? From a papal supporter, a bishop, saying the Roman Catholic Church is no different than socialist China. Today's totalitarian Chinese regime best exemplifies the social doctrine of the Catholic Church. Do you want me to say it again, or did you get it? Cardinal Zen, speaking of the agreement between the Vatican and Beijing, said, quote, they are bringing them, the underground church, out of the cage where they're hiding. And as a result of that, he says, it's terrible. They're going to be destroyed. But then that's all part of the communist plan. Now, you do understand what's going on, right? The Roman Catholic Church, at least under this Pope, and under every other Pope that's ever ruled, wants the power. They see themselves as the Church of Jesus Christ on earth. And this Pope is willing to sacrifice both Roman Catholic doctrine and Chinese people in order to get it. What part of Christian doesn't he understand? This just out today, a sad note of sorts. But Fox News is reporting that a spokesman for Mrs. Barbara Bush, a man by the name of Jim McGrath, released the statement about her health, saying, following a recent series of hospitalizations and after consulting her family and doctors, Mrs. Bush, aged now 92 years, has decided not to seek additional medical treatment and will instead focus on comfort care. It will not surprise those who know her that Barbara Bush has been a rock in the face of her failing health, worrying not about herself, thanks to her abiding faith, but for others. She is surrounded by a family she adores and appreciates the many kind messages and especially the prayers she is receiving. They are in Houston. And if you know the Lord Jesus Christ in the free pardon of sin, and you believe what the Bible teaches, you find this totally consistent. Probably this statement would have occurred several years ago had she been going through the same ordeal and she didn't feel the obligation to stick around and take care of her husband. But most of us as Christians are not hanging on to this life. When it reaches a point where it isn't worth living, and there's not much doctors can do without impoverishing you and the entire family, it might just be time to go. We wish Barbara Bush well, and that her passing would be peaceful. In the next segment, we're going to look at how the world is living up, or lining up, I should say, for the end times prophecy. Stay tuned.